Hi, I'm Tony Rossi for The Christophers, and on today's show, Christopher Award-winning comedy writer and producer Jeannie Gaffigan will discuss her funny and poignant new book, When Life Gives You Pears. It's about the ways that God, family, and humor helped pull her through the greatest ordeal of her life, being diagnosed with a brain tumor. Stay with us. Christopher Closeup starts right now. Hello and welcome to Christopher Closeup. I'm Tony Rossi, and my guest today is Jeannie Gaffigan. Jeannie is a writer and producer who is married to comedian Jim Gaffigan. Not only do they work together, they're also the parents of 5 children. Their lives were going well career-wise and on the home front until one day in 2017, Jeannie discovered that the health issues she'd been experiencing were being caused by a tumor wrapped around her brainstem. It wasn't cancerous, but it needed to come out, and it required a complicated surgery and a difficult recovery. Jeannie joined me on this show in 2017, a few months after that surgery, and today she's back again to update us on her recovery and also discuss her new memoir, When Life Gives You Pears, The Healing Power of Family, Faith, and Funny People. To tell us more, I am pleased to welcome to Christopher Closeup, Jeannie Gaffigan. Jeannie, thanks so much for being on the show again today.
Thank you, Tony, for having me.
Now, let me start with the title of the book, When Life Gives You Pears. In case people weren't listening, the last time you were on the show was a few months after your brain tumor surgery. Tell us a little about the significance of the title of the book, When Life Gives You Pears.
Well, when I first was diagnosed with having a mass in my brain, and I saw the image of the inside of my skull through the MRI, the shape of the tumor was exactly like an inverted pear. So it kind of looked like I had swallowed a pear whole, but instead of going down my throat, it went up into my brain.
Okay.
And I don't know if it was simultaneously or this is just kind of a mixed-up memory, but also my neurosurgeon compared the size of it to the size of a pear. So many times when you hear people are diagnosed with like tumors of any kind, wherever they are, they'll usually like use the fruit comparison. And Jim thinks it's because they just can't do like centimeters, because we'd be like, I don't know what that means. So we need to like visualize something like, an apple, or, the worst kind of tumor, the grapefruit, which Jim also says is the worst kind of fruit. So it's kind of like...
Yeah. Well, I mean, even though the subject matter of the book is serious, and even our conversation so far shows this, by the time I got to page 3 of When Life Gives You Pears, I had laughed out loud multiple times already, and that happened throughout the book. Did you come to see the humor in these situations, be it the cheating on your hearing test or filling out the endless medical forms? Did you find the funny in this stuff as you were going through them, or only in retrospect?
Well, both. Because there were times, like, first of all, when I just am living my life, because when I'm, like, in the cheating on a hearing test part, I don't know anything's wrong with me.
Right.
I'm just, like, crazy Jeannie doing, like, observing myself doing, kind of bizarre things, like trying to beat a hearing test that's actually designed to help me figure out if I have a problem. And I'm like, I know that there's a tone there. And it's just kind of a weird... competitive type A thing about my personality, that being a comedian for so many years has just kind of forced me to kind of like look at my flaws and be able to recognize them, and from a comic perspective, in order for me to not become a slave to my own neuroses.
Sure.
So it's kind of like the lens with which like I view life is kind of through an observational comic lens. There obviously were times in this story where there was nothing funny about what was going on at all. And there was no way that I could conceptualize anything ever being funny about it. But then there were other moments where the irony of certain situations would just strike me in the moment, where even though I was very fearful and, in pain.
Yeah.
A thought would occur to me on how ironic it was that, like, when you have like headaches and hearing loss, that they would like blast like a clown horn in your ear for like an hour. It just seems kind of funny.
Mm-hmm.
So there were times when, I'd be in an MRI machine for like 2 hours and I'd come out and Jim would say, "Are you okay?" And I'd say, "Write this down." Write this down. This is there's so much material about this. And so I know now in retrospect that it was my coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
It was the way, it was one of the many things that I did to deal with a reality I couldn't really process.
Yeah.
So it wasn't everything. I mean, obviously I, had a lot of conversations with God.
Sure.
But also in retrospect, like some of the conversations with God were also funny.
Yes.
So when I had time to reflect about this experience, and so when I had to really think about putting together a chronology of what happened, both for myself and because my book agent was like, people want to know what happened to you. Like crazy. Mm-hmm. I had to get into a situation where I had to relive the chronology of this situation. And also I had a lot of notes and drips and drabs that I had written or dictated to people or whatever. So I had this incredible opportunity to kind of interview my sick self. Mm-hmm. So that was a very unique writing experience because it wasn't like just a normal like memoir. It was like a lot of the book is written in a very casual conversational way, almost like a blog. Yeah. Because I really didn't think that I was going to be, sharing the story with the world. I was just writing it for myself as a coping mechanism. Mm-hmm. And when it came time to put the book together, I didn't edit it because I wanted to sound like I was smart.
Well, as a reader of the book, I have to tell you, it comes across wonderful. You said conversational, but it's inviting to the reader. It makes me laugh. I found it poignant at times. And I'm talking to Jeannie Gaffigan. Her memoir is called When Life Gives You Pears, The Healing Power of Family, Faith, and Funny People. You just mentioned conversations with God, and I know Jim has called you a Shiite Catholic. You are known for being a very devout, fervent Catholic. And I'm curious, because you touch on it a little bit in the book, how did those seeds of faith get planted and evolve in your life?
Well, I grew up in a Catholic family. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's the bottom line. It wasn't like I grew up with, with a bunch of Satan worshipers. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to rebel and become a Catholic. So Catholicism was just like the way we were. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like I was like a Kool-Aid drinker, because I was definitely like any normal kid who questions things. But God was just a character in our house. Mm-hmm. Like our mom would just, would always I don't want to use too Jesus-y language, but she would always invite God in, mm-hmm. To the conversation. So, if I was people are being mean to me and bullying me at school, she'd be like, well, Jeannie, the angels are going to be with you, and the Lord is protecting you. Mm-hmm. It was just, even when I was a little kid. So I was like, okay, there's this thing, the Lord, mm-hmm. Is always with me. And then also the tradition of going to Mass every week. It was just something we did. Mm-hmm. So it became ingrained in my cultural identity that, that's what you do on Sunday. It's like you get up, you fight with your siblings, you go to Mass, you complain on the way, your dad drops you off, looks for a parking spot, mm-hmm. you go to Mass, you sing the songs, and then you have, a big family dinner. Mm-hmm. That was my entire childhood. Sure. So because God was this real thing in my life, it wasn't does God exist, ever. Mm-hmm. I always, even when I wasn't going to Mass, I knew God was there, mm-hmm. Or I felt God was there. So as I came into my adulthood and decided that, this is something that I want, I'm not forced to go to Mass because I have to. I want to go, mm-hmm. because it makes me feel like there's a different part of this reality that I'm the beneficiary of. Mm-hmm. And so as I got older, my life got more complicated and harder. Mm-hmm. And so things that I didn't really need God for, that I felt like I didn't need him for, and then, of course, there were always things I felt like I needed God for. I'd always be like, God, I need an A in this class, or I
Sure.
need to get a parking spot. I mean, I was always like kind of negotiating with God as like this kind of like, sugar daddy type style of God.
Yeah.
So, but as I, experienced like pregnancy and loss and death of relatives, and I really, instead of turning away from my spirituality, I got more into it because I realized that because I have, I'm not a really strong person in a lot of ways, that I can't, I feel like, I can control everything, and I can be, I'm the oldest of 9 kids, so I was like basically the mommy dearest as a 13-year-old of my family. So, but at the same time, like when left to my own devices, things wouldn't go my way, and I couldn't really understand that. But with God as kind of the designer of my life, I could say, okay, I understand that like this didn't go my way, but you must have another plan for it, or else it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
So in that way, I was able to like let go a little bit of my ego. Mm-hmm. And as I got older and things got harder, it just became more of a relationship that I would understand, because things would happen where, I guess if I didn't have such a strong seed of faith that had taken root in me, I probably would have been like, well, clearly there is no God if I'm not like happy all the time. Mm-hmm. And the life isn't perfect, that there's no God. Like, I think that there's kind of a tendency sometimes to do that, to like turn your back on God because life wasn't fair.
Sure.
But instead of that, I would get closer. So I think that when this, so far, I'm not saying this is going to be the hardest thing I go through, but at the time, finding out that I had like a life-threatening, urgent situation, and looking at my life and seeing how I had sort of sunk my, talent into everyone's, daily schedule. And I realized, whoa, this is really rough, that if I'm exiting now, like, I think I've set up, kind of a unmanageable situation here.
Yeah. And
so at that point, there was never a moment where I was like, there is no God. I was like, okay, God, it said that you're not going to give us anything we can't handle. Mm-hmm. Well, I can't handle this one, so I'm going to just turn it over to you about now. Yeah. And I think that just kind of crawling into bed and putting the covers over the head and letting God handle it isn't what I'm talking about. It's like saying, I'm just going to need your guidance in some of these like major decisions that I have to make in the next like 24 hours.
I'm Tony Rossi, and you're listening to Christopher Closeup. I'll be back in a minute with more of my conversation with Jeannie Gaffigan, but first, here's a message the Christophers would like to share with you.
Caregiving is hard work, and lots of us are doing it. Statistics show that 66 million Americans are caring for a parent, spouse, child, family member, or friend. Most of the attention is appropriately directed to the person who needs assistance. But caregivers need to make sure they don't collapse under the pressure of all their responsibilities. That's why the Christophers have prepared a news note called Caregivers Need Care Too. It lays out various steps that caregivers can take to maintain their own health, happiness, and relationships. To request your free copy of Caregivers Need Care Too, send an email to radio@christophers.org or call our toll-free number at 1-888-298-4050. That's 1-888-298-4050. We look forward to hearing from you.
Welcome back to Christopher Closeup. I'm talking to Jeannie Gaffigan about her experience with a brain tumor, having a pear-sized brain tumor removed from her brain. Her memoir is called When Life Gives You Pears, The Healing Power of Family, Faith, and Funny People. And I should say, you found out about all this, I think was it on Holy Thursday, and then the Monday after Easter was your surgery, right?
Yeah, I had 2 surgeries, the Monday and Tuesday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, this all did happen over a short period of time. And, staying on the God topic, because you write about your mom's cousin, I think her name is Marita, and how you were inspired by her faith. What effect did she have on you, and how did you rely on her during your illness?
Well, she's one of these people who has had, I'll let her write a book about it, but, when sometimes in your life you meet people who are, what you would perceive to be a saint.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I look up to Marita is because Marita has gone through unimaginable horror and obstacles in her life,
mm-hmm.
and has remained steadfast with her eyes on the prize and happy and helpful and always giving to other people. And it's just one of these people where you're just completely like saying, I'll have what she's having.
Yeah.
It's like she's just an inspiration to everyone who knows her.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just kind of this beacon of hope. And she is like probably one of the most faithful people that I've ever met. Like I've not heard her, express the normal anxieties of my mother is an amazing, human being and probably, up for sainthood at some point. But going to my mother with the news that I had this medical condition
mm-hmm.
was not my first instinct.
Right.
I was like, I've got to really find out exactly what is going to happen before I tell my mother, because it's not only her personality, but it's the fact that I'm her child. And if my child had something wrong with them, it would be worse than finding out I had something wrong with myself.
Sure.
So I looked to Marita because she was like my mother, but yet not my mother.
Mm-hmm.
So she was like this sort of like surrogate mother to me. And every time over the years that I spoke to her about anything that was kind of deep going on from the when I was dating Jim,
mm-hmm.
and I was like, I just, she would be like, when are you going to get married to Jim? Like, that's what she would just directly ask me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are you doing? She was just like, this dating is going on way too long.
Yeah.
And she was just direct about it,
mm-hmm.
but not judgmental, but just kind of cutting to she was kind of like when God puts two people together, it's like the more you fight against it, the more you're not listening to your heart. It's like that kind of like spiritual direction.
Yeah, like a wisdom.
And, I would go to her over the years with things, and she'd always give me so much hope. I'd
mm-hmm.
say, I'm fearful about this or that or the other thing. And she'd say, God is working in your life, and you have to trust him. Just very simple advice that, to the sort of like secular intellectual side of me would not have made any sense.
Yeah.
But I was drawn to her because she appealed to my spirituality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she does a wonderful job connecting with you and connecting you to other people in the story. I'm talking to Jeannie Gaffigan. She's the Christopher Award-winning director, writer, and producer of The Jim Gaffigan Show. She co-wrote 7 of Jim's comedy specials, and now she has written a memoir about her own experience with a brain tumor called When Life Gives You Pears, The Healing Power of Family, Faith, and Funny People. And though ordinarily I wouldn't compare Jeannie to Moses, you do write in the book that you think God gave you some new commandments, though I don't think they were on stone tablets. So tell us a little about the commandments you feel that God gave you through this experience.
Well, also, let me just, before anyone thinks I have delusions of grandeur,
okay,
let me just say that I think that God is given everyone commandments.
Sure.
Okay, I'm not special.
Mm-hmm.
I just was listening because I had to stop talking for a minute, which is very difficult for me. So let me just open with, about the commandments, that it's not like I'm the new Moses or anything like that.
No.
There's no, I mean, even though I do feel like there was some Red Sea parting that went on when from diagnosis to walking into the top neurosurgery, department in the city, because there was absolutely no reason that should have happened.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like I was being like, can comedians' wives get in? There was no name or anything. It was just all like miraculous.
Yeah.
But first of all, I want to say that when the busyness, like I couldn't do this. I mean, I literally what have you ever heard of the phrase, the prayer closet? Go into your prayer closet and shut the door, so you can drown out the noise of what's around you, so you can figure out what God is saying to you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I built myself a prayer closet, and I never went in it, except to clean it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I had this way of kind of avoiding listening to my inner voice, when God was talking to me. So when I was in a situation where I could not move, and I couldn't eat, and I couldn't do anything, I went into a kind of forced period of cloistered monastery of my own mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I heard, that God, I was regretful about what I had not done with my life and how I had been living my life, because it became very clear to me that, as many times as I volunteered or, started programs at church or made sure all my kids had, bows in their hair and the right size tennis shoes, I wasn't really experiencing life and motherhood in a pure way.
Yeah.
And I felt like I wanted another chance. And when I say that God spoke to me, I really feel that God spoke to me and said, you are getting another chance, and this is what you need to do. Mm-hmm. And so I called them commandments because I was just being funny.
Yes.
But they were kind of like the spiritual direction from the source of wisdom that resides in all of us, which I believe is God.
Yeah.
Who's talking to us, and we're not tuned into it.
Sure.
So I feel like God said that I need to enjoy the moments that He's given me with these kids, with my friends, with my family, and I need to experience gratitude.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to control everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when readers, when they read this book, when they're done with this book, what message or messages do you hope that they're left with?
I think that there's several. I want to say that the major theme of this book is gratitude. Have gratitude. Live your day in gratitude, because gratitude makes you kind. Gratitude is the seed of all good things, of goodness, I believe. And I believe that when you have gratitude and you're good, that other people will be good. It's just something that, sort of is the thematic expression of this book. And if you have gratitude for the small things, like swallowing water or smelling your kid's head, it just multiplies, and it kind of radiates out and affects your whole life. Yeah. And I think that if I had to just say that there's one big theme, that's what it is.
Yeah.
But also there's a lot of sub-themes, like you can't hide from pain. You have to understand that the people that are around you in your health are going to be the ones that you're going to need in your sickness. So if we are, very exclusive and we don't have time for anybody, or we don't, you may have, just have like the angel brigade show up anyway and say, even though you alienated me my whole life, I'm going to be there for you.
Yeah.
You still could do that. But I kind of have this memory of during, right after 9/11, I was living in New York, not married, young 20s, and I saw humanity change for a short period of time, where when you'd be on the subway, everyone would look at each other and sort of be like, yeah, we could be blown up any minute. And there was a different kind of like reality. And so I kind of experienced a more version of that after this.
Yeah.
Where, because, you forget, and then you just go on, and then you're just like, get out of my seat, like a year later. But I feel like because I'm still suffering some effects of this surgery physically, it's easy for me right now to keep, the sense of gratitude, because it is still hard to swallow.
Yeah.
It is still hard to breathe sometimes. It is still hard to speak. So I don't have to tie a string around my finger to remind me to be grateful.
Yeah.
But I think that my advice to people is like, put a Post-it note on your laptop and just say, be grateful. It's a constant reminder, because it's so easy to start listening to the noise of, the stresses of life and forget that you're alive.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think that's a lot of truth and wisdom, and I know, speaking for myself, and I'm sure all of our listeners, we are grateful that you took the time to be on the show today. I'm Tony Rossi. You're listening to Christopher Closeup. I've been talking to Jeannie Gaffigan. Her book is called When Life Gives You Pears, The Healing Power of Family, Faith, and Funny People. Buy this book, read this book. You won't regret it. There's a lot of wisdom and truth and humor and enlightenment, and I think, like Jeannie just said, it'll make you more grateful for all the simple things in life that we often take for granted. So, Jeannie, God bless you and your continued recovery, and thanks so much for talking with me today.
Thank you, Tony. I look forward to talking to you again.
Now, before we end today's show, here's another message the Christophers would like to share with you.
The grace of God has a way of sneaking up on us, and if we're not paying attention, it might even slip right past us. That's why the Christophers have prepared a news note called Opening Yourself to God's Grace. It will help you become more aware of the moments in your life when God makes His presence known in unexpected ways. Moments that can draw beauty out of brokenness and allow you to experience the depths of His love. To request your free copy of Opening Yourself to God's Grace, send an email to radio@christophers.org or call our toll-free number at 1-888-298-4050. We look forward to hearing from you.
In closing, I want to thank all our listeners for tuning in today, and I encourage you to visit our website at christophers.org to learn more about the Christophers and to download free literature and podcasts. When you're there, you can also find links to our blog and our Facebook and Twitter pages. And if you have any questions or comments about the show, you can send an email to radio@christophers.org. Our engineer for today's show is Brian Bonifacio, and I'm Tony Rossi, your host. Thanks again for joining us, and remember that it's better to light one candle than to curse the darkness.